The Kazakh steppe. June 30th, 1971. A spacecraft descends under a perfect parachute. The capsule is charred but intact. It touches down softly in the grass and tips onto its side. Recovery crews race across the field. They reach the capsule and knock on the hull. No response. They knock again. Nothing. They unfasten the hatch and swing it open. What they find instead, no one will speak of it for 2 years. What happened in those final minutes? This is the story of Soyuz 11. The year is 1971. The Americans have already walked on the moon. The Soviets have lost that race. But they have a new plan. If they cannot plant a flag on the moon, they will conquer something else. Long-duration spaceflight, living and working in orbit for weeks at a time. On April 19, 1971, the Soviet Union launches Soyuz 1. It is the world's first space station, a 20-ton cylinder orbiting 200 kilometers above Earth. Inside are sleeping quarters, scientific instruments, and enough supplies for a crew to stay for a month. But first, someone has to get there. The first attempt fails. Soyuz 10 launches 3 days later with a crew of 3. They reach the station. They dock. But something goes wrong with the hatch. They cannot get inside. After 5 hours of trying, they give up and return to Earth. One cosmonaut passes out during landing when toxic fumes fill the cabin. All 3 survive, but the mission is a failure. Now everything depends on Soyuz 11. The prime crew is impressive. Commander Alexei Leonov performed the first spacewalk in history. Flight engineer Valery Kubasov is one of the most experienced cosmonauts in the program. Test engineer Pyotr Kolodin rounds out the team. They have trained for months. They are ready. 3 days before launch, doctors examine the crew at the Baikonur Cosmodrome. They find a dark spot on Kubasov's chest X-ray. It might be tuberculosis. The doctors are not certain, but they cannot take the risk. Soviet rules are strict. If one crew member is grounded, the entire crew is replaced. Leonov argues, Kolodin pleads, it does not matter. The backup crew will fly instead. Kolodin returns to his room that night. He gets drunk and cries. He has trained for years. Now he will watch from the ground while someone else makes history. He does not know it yet, but this decision will save his life. The dark spot on Kubasov's lung is not tuberculosis. It is an allergic reaction to pesticide sprayed on trees near the launch site. He will recover within days, but by then, it will be too late. The backup crew steps forward. Commander Georgy Dobrovolsky is 43 years old, a lieutenant colonel in the Soviet Air Force. This will be his first spaceflight. Flight engineer Vladislav Volkov is 35. He flew once before on Soyuz 7. Test engineer Viktor Patsayev is 38, a civilian engineer on his first mission. They have 72 hours to prepare for the most important mission of their lives. June 6, 1971. The Soyuz 11 rocket stands on the launch pad at Baikonur. Steam vents from its sides. The 3 cosmonauts are strapped into their seats inside the tiny capsule at the top. They wear simple flight suits, no pressure suits. The cabin is too small for 3 men in bulky gear. The engines ignite. The rocket rises. Within minutes, they are in orbit. The next day, Dobrovolsky guides the spacecraft towards Soyuz 1. The station grows larger in the window, a cylinder covered in solar panels, floating against the black of space. He takes manual control and docks without incident. 3 hours later, after equalizing pressure between the 2 spacecraft, Patsayev opens the hatch. He floats through and becomes the first human being to enter a space station. But something is wrong. The air inside smells like smoke. Burnt. Patsayev retreats back to Soyuz. Ground control advises them to turn on the ventilation system. 6 of the 8 fans have failed. Patsayev and Volkov spend hours repairing them. That night, the crew sleeps in their Soyuz while the station's air clears. The next morning, they try again. This time, the air is breathable. They enter Salyut 1 and begin their mission. For the next 3 weeks, they live and work in space. They conduct experiments on plant growth. They photograph Earth through the station's windows. They study the effects of weightlessness on their own bodies. They operate the Orion telescope to observe distant stars in ultraviolet light. Every night, they appear on Soviet television. The entire country watches. Volkov becomes a celebrity. Young women across the Soviet Union turn him into a pinup star. His face appears in magazines. His voice is broadcast into millions of homes. Children write letters to the cosmonauts. For 3 weeks, they are the most famous men in the country. But life on the station is not easy. The exercise treadmill shakes the entire structure when they use it. The crew must run twice a day to keep their muscles from weakening. Every session rattles equipment and experiments throughout the station. On day 11, a fire breaks out. Smoke fills the compartment. The crew evacuates to their Soyuz and waits. Mission planners in Moscow debate whether to abort. They decide to continue. The fire is extinguished. The mission presses on. By June 29th, the crew has been in space for 23 days. They have shattered every endurance record. The previous record was 18 days. They have beaten it by nearly a week. Now it is time to go home. The cosmonauts pack film canisters, scientific samples, and data tapes into the Soyuz. They transfer control from the station back to their spacecraft. They seal the hatch between Salyut and Soyuz. A warning light flickers. The hatch seal might not be secure. Ground control walks them through the procedure to reopen it, clean the seals, and close it again. The light goes off. The seal is good. Volkov jokes with ground control. Make sure the cognac is ready. At 9:28 p.m. Moscow time, Soyuz 11 undocks from Salyut 1 and drifts away. The station shrinks in the window. 3 hours remain until they are home. The Soyuz spacecraft is made of 3 parts. The orbital module at the front is where the crew lives during flight. The descent module in the middle is a bell-shaped capsule that will carry them back to Earth. The service module at the rear contains the engine and power systems. Before re-entry, the orbital and service modules must be discarded. Explosive bolts will fire to separate them. Only the descent module will survive the plunge through the atmosphere. At 1:47 a.m. Moscow time, the crew fires the engine to slow down. 12 minutes later, while still 168 kilometers above Earth, the bolts fire. Something goes wrong. The 12 bolts are designed to fire one after another in a precise sequence. Instead, they fire all at once. The jolt is violent. It shakes the entire spacecraft. Deep inside the descent module, beneath the cosmonauts' seats, sits a small valve. It is called a pressure equalization valve. It is supposed to open later at low altitude to equalize cabin pressure before landing. The opening is only 35 millimeters wide. The shock from the bolts knocks it open. Air begins rushing out of the cabin. The hiss is immediate. The pressure drops fast. At this altitude, there is nothing outside but vacuum. The atmosphere inside the capsule is vanishing. Dobrovolsky's breathing rate spikes. The biomedical sensors strapped to his chest record 48 breaths per minute. Normal is 16. His body is starving for oxygen. Patsayev is closest to the valve. He unbuckles from his seat and reaches beneath the couch. He knows what is happening. He knows where the valve is. But the cabin is filling with fog as the moisture in the air freezes. His vision blurs, his hands shake, his ears rupture from the pressure change. Closing the valve manually takes 52 seconds under normal conditions. He does not have 52 seconds. He does not even have 20. Within 15 seconds of decompression, the oxygen levels in their blood drop too low to think clearly. Within 20 seconds, they lose the ability to move. Within 40 seconds, cardiac arrest. By 110 seconds after the bolts fired, all 3 cosmonauts are dead. The capsule continues its descent on autopilot. It does not need a living crew to land. The parachutes will deploy automatically. The soft landing rockets will fire on their own. Ground control tries to reach them by radio. Static. They try again. Nothing. The voices have vanished. Controllers assume it is just the normal communication blackout caused by re-entry. The capsule is surrounded by superheated plasma that blocks radio signals. This happens on every mission. Communications will resume when the capsule slows down. But the silence continues. Minutes pass. The capsule should have emerged from blackout by now. Still nothing. Finally, a recovery helicopter spots the parachute descending over the Kazakh steppe. The capsule touches down softly. It tips onto its side in the grass. Recovery crews rush toward it. The rescuers reach the capsule within 2 minutes of landing. The exterior is charred from re-entry but undamaged. They hammer on the hull to signal the crew. No response. They unfasten the hatch and swing it open. Inside, they find all 3 cosmonauts still strapped in their seats. Their eyes are closed. Dark blue patches cover their faces. Dried blood trails from their noses and ears. Dobrovolsky is still warm. The medics pull them out and attempt resuscitation. They pump their chests. They breathe into their lungs. It does not work. The cosmonauts have been dead for more than 30 minutes. Their brains are beyond saving. Back in Moscow, Mission Control receives 3 numbers, 111. In the Soviet system, a 5 means excellent health. A 4 means good. A 3 means injured. A 2 means severely injured. A 1 means dead. 3 ones. The entire crew is gone. Veteran cosmonaut Alexei Yeliseyev flies immediately to the landing site. He had spoken to these men just hours before. He had joked with Volkov about the cognac. Now he stands on the empty steppe, staring at a perfect capsule and a flawless landing site. And the guys are dead, he says. Now the truth vanishes too. The Soviets do not reveal the real cause. They announce only that the cosmonauts died during re-entry. No details, no explanation. American scientists panic. They fear that 3 weeks in weightlessness killed the crew. NASA's Skylab program is scheduled to launch soon. If long-duration spaceflight is fatal, the entire program is in jeopardy. For nearly 2 years, the world does not know what happened inside that capsule. It is not until 1973 that the full truth emerges. A tiny valve, a violent jolt, 35 millimeters between life and death. The disaster forces a complete redesign of the Soyuz spacecraft. The cabin is reconfigured to hold only 2 cosmonauts instead of 3. The extra space allows them to wear pressure suits during launch and landing. If the same valve failure happened again, the suits would keep them alive. A state funeral is held in Red Square. Thousands line the streets. The cosmonauts are cremated and their ashes placed in the Kremlin wall. American astronaut Tom Stafford represents President Nixon. He helps carry the urns. 4 years later, he will shake hands in orbit with Alexei Leonov, the man who should have commanded Soyuz 11. 1 month after the disaster, the crew of Apollo 15 lands on the moon. They leave behind a small aluminum figure and a plaque listing the names of every astronaut and cosmonaut who died in the pursuit of space exploration. Dobrovolsky, Volkov, Patsayev. Their names are still there, resting in the lunar dust 384,000 kilometers from Earth. They remain the only humans to have died in outer space.